Imagine walking alone through the dark streets of London. The year is 1888. A cold fog hangs over the city. The gas lamps barely pierce the darkness. Behind you, footsteps echo against the wet cobblestones. You turn around. No one is there. But someone is watching. Somewhere in the shadows, a killer is waiting. A killer so terrifying that his name would become synonymous with fear itself. He hunted the vulnerable. He struck with shocking brutality. He taunted investigators. And despite the largest manhunt of the Victorian era, he was never caught. The newspapers called him a monster. The police called him a ghost. The world would come to know him by a different name: Jack the Ripper. More than a century later, his crimes remain one of the most infamous unsolved mysteries in human history. Who was he? How did he evade capture? And what really happened in the dark alleys of Whitechapel? Tonight, we step back into the fog-shrouded streets of Victorian London to uncover the chilling story of the killer behind Britain's greatest unsolved mystery. Welcome to Uncuffed Mysteries, where every mystery has a story. This is the story of Jack the Ripper. To understand the legend of Jack the Ripper, we must first understand the world in which he lived. London in 1888 was the largest city on earth. It was the beating heart of the British Empire, a city of wealth, industry, and power. But beneath its grand buildings and royal palaces lay a darker reality. In the East End district of Whitechapel, poverty was everywhere. Thousands of people lived crammed into overcrowded lodging houses. Families often shared a single room. Disease spread easily. Crime was common. And for many, each day was a struggle simply to survive. As night fell, Whitechapel transformed. The narrow streets disappeared beneath a blanket of fog and darkness. Gas lamps cast long shadows across the cobblestones. Drunken voices echoed from crowded pubs. Police officers patrolled the streets, but there were simply too many alleys and too many places for danger to hide. For many women living in Whitechapel, prostitution was often the only way to earn enough money for food and a bed for the night. They became easy targets in a neighborhood where violence was an everyday reality. Yet no one could have imagined that a predator was already stalking these streets, watching, waiting, preparing to commit a series of murders so shocking that they would captivate the world for generations. The terror that would soon grip Whitechapel was unlike anything London had ever seen. And it all began in the early hours of August 31st, 1888. On a quiet street known as Bucks Row, a gruesome discovery was about to change history forever. The early hours of August 31st, 1888 were cold and quiet. Most of London was asleep. The narrow streets of Whitechapel were nearly deserted. Only a few workers made their way through the darkness as they headed to their jobs before sunrise. One of those men was a carman named Charles Cross. As he walked along Bucks Row shortly before 4 o'clock in the morning, something caught his attention. A dark shape lay motionless on the ground ahead. At first, Cross thought it was a drunken woman sleeping in the street. But as he approached, he realized something was terribly wrong. The woman wasn't sleeping. She wasn't moving at all. Moments later, another passerby joined him. The two men examined the figure in the dim light. The woman appeared lifeless. Unsure of what to do, they quickly sought out a police officer. When authorities arrived and examined the body, they made a horrifying discovery. The woman's throat had been cut. The victim was identified as Mary Ann Nichols, a 43-year-old woman known to friends as Polly. Like many residents of Whitechapel, Nichols lived a difficult life marked by poverty and uncertainty. She often stayed in cheap lodging houses whenever she could afford a bed for the night. On the evening before her death, she had been seen walking through the neighborhood. Witnesses later reported that she was trying to earn enough money to secure a place to sleep. She never returned. For investigators, the crime scene presented more questions than answers. There were no eyewitnesses, no obvious murder weapon, and almost no clues pointing to a suspect. The killer had struck swiftly and silently before disappearing into the darkness. At first, police believed they were investigating a single, tragic murder. Violent crime was not uncommon in Whitechapel, but there was something unsettling about this case. Something that suggested the killer might strike again. Within days, fear began spreading through the East End. Women whispered warnings to one another. Residents avoided the streets after dark, and police increased patrols throughout the district. No one knew it yet, but Whitechapel was about to become the hunting ground of one of history's most infamous killers. September 8th, 1888. Just 8 days after the murder of Marianne Nichols, Whitechapel awoke to another horrifying discovery. The fear that had begun to spread through the East End was about to become something much worse. At approximately 6 o'clock in the morning, a resident of Hanbury Street stepped into the backyard of his building. What he found would shock the entire city. Lying near the back steps was the body of a woman. She had been murdered sometime before dawn. The victim was soon identified as Annie Chapman. She was 47 years old. Like Marianne Nichols, Chapman struggled with poverty and often relied on temporary lodging houses for shelter. In the days leading up to her death, she had been searching for money to pay for a bed. Now she had become the second victim in what was beginning to look like a deadly pattern. As investigators examined the scene, they noticed disturbing similarities between the two murders. Both women had been attacked in the early hours of the morning. Both had been killed in secluded areas. And in both cases, the killer had vanished without leaving behind a clear trail. The similarities were impossible to ignore. For the first time, police began to suspect they were hunting a serial killer. News of the murder spread rapidly across London. Newspapers printed alarming headlines. Residents demanded answers, and fear tightened its grip on Whitechapel. Women were warned not to walk alone at night. Some refused to leave their homes after sunset. Others carried makeshift weapons for protection. But no one knew who the killer was, or where he might strike next. As the investigation intensified, detectives interviewed witnesses and followed countless leads. Yet every path seemed to end in frustration. The murderer remained invisible, a ghost moving through the crowded streets of London. Weeks passed without another attack. Some hoped the nightmare was over. Perhaps the killer had left the city. Perhaps he had been arrested for another crime. Or perhaps he was already dead. But those hopes would soon be shattered. Because on the night of September 30th, 1888, Whitechapel would witness a level of terror unlike anything it had seen before. The early hours of September 30th, 1888. Whitechapel was quiet. A cold mist drifted through the narrow streets. Most residents were asleep, but somewhere in the darkness, a killer was preparing to strike again. Shortly after 1 o'clock in the morning, a man walking through Berners Street made a horrifying discovery. A woman was lying in a gateway. Her name was Elizabeth Stride. She was 44 years old. Like the previous victims, she had been living on the margins of society and struggling to survive. Police arrived quickly and secured the area. At first glance, the murder appeared similar to the others, but something was different. Investigators noticed that the attack seemed incomplete. Many detectives would later believe that the killer had been interrupted before he could carry out the full assault. If that theory was true, it meant one terrifying possibility. The murderer was still out there, still searching for another victim. And that is exactly what may have happened. Less than an hour later, nearly a mile away, another body was discovered. This time, the victim was Catherine Eddowes. She was found in Mitre Square shortly before 2 o'clock in the morning. The scene shocked even experienced investigators. The similarities to the earlier murders were unmistakable. The same brutal precision, the same silent efficiency. The same disappearance into the darkness. Now, there could be little doubt. Whitechapel was being hunted by a serial killer. The fact that 2 women had been murdered within a single night sent shockwaves throughout London. Panic spread rapidly. Newspapers printed sensational headlines. Citizens demanded immediate action. Police flooded the streets. Extra patrols were assigned throughout Whitechapel. Detectives worked around the clock. Yet despite their efforts, the killer remained one step ahead. As investigators searched for clues, another disturbing development emerged. Letters began arriving at newspaper offices and police stations. The letters claimed to be written by the murderer himself. One of them contained a name that would soon become famous around the world, a name that would forever be linked to fear: Jack the Ripper. Whether the killer actually wrote the letters remains a mystery, but the nickname captured the public's imagination. From that moment forward, the unknown murderer was no longer just a suspect. He had become a legend, a shadowy figure haunting the streets of London. And the worst was still yet to come. Because 6 weeks later, Jack the Ripper would commit what many consider his most horrifying murder. A crime so shocking that it would remain etched into history forever. November 9th, 1888. The streets of Whitechapel were once again cloaked in darkness. For more than a month, the killer had remained silent. Some residents dared to hope that the nightmare was finally over. Perhaps Jack the Ripper had fled London. Perhaps he had died. Or perhaps he had simply chosen to stop. But in the early hours of that cold November morning, those hopes were shattered. At approximately 10:45 a.m., a landlord's assistant arrived at a small room on Miller's Court. He had come to collect overdue rent from a tenant named Mary Jane Kelly. When no one answered the door, he looked through a broken window. What he saw would haunt him for the rest of his life. Inside the room was the body of Mary Jane Kelly. She was believed to be around 25 years old, making her the youngest of the Ripper's commonly accepted victims. Unlike the previous murders, which had taken place outdoors, Kelly had been killed inside her own room. The privacy of the location allowed the killer far more time than he had ever had before. Investigators who entered the room were confronted with one of the most shocking crime scenes in Victorian history. Even hardened police officers were reportedly disturbed by what they witnessed. The murder was unlike anything they had seen before. News of the crime spread rapidly. Newspapers filled their front pages with sensational reports. Across London, fear reached its peak. Residents locked their doors earlier. Women avoided walking alone whenever possible. The name Jack the Ripper was now known throughout Britain and beyond. Police intensified their search. Detectives followed every lead. Witnesses were questioned. Suspects were investigated. But despite enormous efforts, the case remained unsolved. Then something strange happened. The murder stopped. Days passed, then weeks, then months. No new victims appeared. The killer who had terrorized Whitechapel seemed to have vanished. Had he left the city? Had he been imprisoned for another crime? Had he died? Or had he simply found a way to disappear forever? No one knew. And that uncertainty would become one of the greatest mysteries surrounding the case. For investigators, the silence was almost as unsettling as the murders themselves. Because while the killing had stopped, the questions remained. And more than a century later, those questions still have no definitive answers. Who was Jack the Ripper? Why did he kill? And how did he escape justice? To answer those questions, we must examine the massive investigation that followed and the countless suspects who have been accused over the years. By the end of 1888, London was desperate for answers. 5 women had been murdered. An entire district had lived in fear. And despite months of investigation, the killer remained unidentified. The Metropolitan Police launched one of the largest murder investigations in British history. Hundreds of officers were assigned to the case. Thousands of residents were questioned. Every lead, no matter how small, was pursued. Detectives patrolled Whitechapel day and night. Witness statements were collected. Suspects were interviewed. But the investigation faced a problem that would prove nearly impossible to overcome. The year was 1888. Modern forensic science did not exist. There was no DNA testing, no fingerprint databases, no surveillance cameras, no criminal profiling. Investigators had to rely almost entirely on eyewitness accounts and physical evidence found at crime scenes. And in the crowded streets of Victorian London, that evidence was often scarce. As public pressure mounted, rumors spread throughout the city. Everyone seemed to have a theory. Everyone seemed to have a suspect. Over the years, more than 100 individuals have been linked to the Jack the Ripper case. Some theories pointed toward local butchers. Others accused doctors and surgeons, believing the killer possessed medical knowledge. Several suspects were considered mentally unstable individuals living in the area. One of the most discussed suspects was a Polish immigrant named Aaron Kosminski. Kosminski lived in Whitechapel during the time of the murders and later suffered from severe mental illness. Some investigators believed he matched witness descriptions. Others argued that the evidence against him was far too weak. Another frequently mentioned suspect was Montague John Druitt, a barrister and schoolteacher whose death shortly after the murders attracted attention from investigators. Yet no direct evidence ever connected him to the crimes. Over time, even more controversial theories emerged. Some writers claimed the killer was a member of the British aristocracy. Others suggested connections to secret societies. A few theories even alleged involvement by members of the royal family. These claims generated enormous public interest but lacked convincing proof. The truth is that every major suspect suffers from the same problem. There is not enough evidence. No suspect has ever been conclusively tied to the murders. No confession has been proven genuine. And no theory has been accepted by historians as the definitive solution. Perhaps the answer has been lost to history forever. Or perhaps somewhere, hidden within old records and forgotten evidence, the truth is still waiting to be discovered. Until that day, Jack the Ripper will remain one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in criminal history. What do you think? Who was Jack the Ripper? Do you believe one of the known suspects was responsible, or do you think the truth may never be known? Let us know your theory in the comments below. If you enjoyed this investigation, please like this video, share it with fellow mystery enthusiasts, and subscribe for more true crime stories, unsolved cases, and historical mysteries. Thank you for watching. This has been Uncuffed Mysteries, where every mystery has a story.